All right,
All right.
let's close this thing out
Yep.
before you get too sexual.
Okay, yeah, well, that's the surrender.
All right, so I'm not for sure what officer it was,
Yeah,
but
I forget his name, but it was like his second in command, Cornwallis's
yeah. Well, before that, there was like an officer came out waving the white
white
flag.
flag with the, I guess,
Yeah,
it
with
was
the
drum,
drummer. So then, yeah, so they
the
that
articles
that
of
gives the
surrender,
ceasefire. Then 18 October, the commissioners meet at the Morehouse. The British send a
which is,
lieutenant colonel and a major, and the Allies send Lafayette's um, brother-in-law. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, and a colonel to talk about this. And
yeah,
then at the night on 19 October, the British garrison at Yorktown marches to surrender field. Um, and that's what you were talking about. Like the Cornwallis didn't even come and surrender
yeah.
himself.
And on a side note, that Morehouse, that surrender is still there, and you can still
Oh,
go
really?
walk in there and see the living room where they
Like hashed
signed.
it out and
Yeah,
surrendered.
yeah, the house
Man,
is
that's
still there.
crazy.
Um, but yeah, so Cornwallis, I think a matter of pride, I guess,
Yeah, he says that he fell ill.
it fell ill, which I think is horseshit. I think it was more fell ill of wounded pride,
Oh yeah, I don't
and
think
I
he
think it
wanted
was
to
an
go.
insult because, like, was it? I thought I read where he would surrender to the French,
Yeah, so that
to
was the whole thing.
Rochambeau. Yeah, but
So he sent his second in command
yes,
to surrender, and when that guy went to surrender, he tried to surrender to the French, Rochambeau,
yeah.
and he said,
Go
"No, you
talk to that
surrender
guy over
to him."
there.
Washington was like, "Well, because it's not Cornwallis, is like, I'm not going to accept it. You
Right,
go to my second in command."
and hand him the saber.
So he
Yeah,
actually second in command actually surrendered to second in
man.
command, and I'm not for sure who the general was that accepted the surrender
Yeah,
or the officer. Don't even try to say general because I'm not for sure. But I think I read somewhere too like he had to surrender early
yeah.
on in the Revolutionary War. So like it was kind of like befitting that Washington like I was like, if Cornwallis isn't going to surrender to me himself, then I'm going to let some other guy get the glory of the surrender
Right.
in the sense
And
of
because I thought it was really it was mainly he was disrespecting Washington.
yeah, because he was like wouldn't even acknowledge.
Acknowledge Washington as again, and I guess that's correct. They wouldn't recognize us as a nation
Yeah,
because
so they were looking
so
at it as like they surrendered to the
the
French.
French and not gave up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember this is what I think is very cool, but also kind of petty. But the Allies, when they accepted the surrender of like the British troops and stuff, what they did was they lined up uh, like the Americans on one side, the French on the
Yeah.
other, and marched like the
Them.
British up through them to throw down their weapons
Yeah.
and everything. And I remember reading that the British wouldn't even acknowledge like the American troops, but they would
Mm-mm.
look at the French with like disgust
Right.
and like resentment and anger or whatever.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't even acknowledge like the American
Yeah.
troops.
Yeah, and it's a pretty big field there because like I said, you go there, but I've read stories and you hear it on the little when you're going through there, you play the audio. They said there was actually some British soldiers and they laid down their firearms. They were crying. I guess they had sentimental value towards their rifles.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean,
It's fought with this thing for how many years, especially you're there from.
and you don't know where it's going to go afterwards. It's not
Yeah.
like you're symbolically laying it down and then you
Right.
get it back.
No, you're laying it down and you're not getting it again.
Yeah. I mean, that's
I can see that
kind of
though.
like with us, like you've been taught from day one when you're in the military, like this is your rifle, like
Right.
it'd be like your tank,
My
surrendering your
tank,
tank.
yeah. Yeah, because I know when we switched out tanks, and I was a little bummed. Like, the other one was kind of like home,
Yeah, that was your
been some
tank.
miles, yeah, together, but.
And you soon learn to kind of move on or whatever.
Right.
But like the rifles. Like I switched multiple rifles over time, but like they hold a sentimental part to you
Right.
because it's the thing that you touch, you grab, you hold every
Because
single day.
it's a part of you.
And for them, it's even more in the sense of once you got that rifle, like you got it
Yeah.
from the time that's probably the same rifle you had from the time you entered service to the time you left.
Oh yeah. I mean,
It's not
it
like how it
doesn't.
is for us today where you turn in at one duty station, go to another,
Right.
get a new one.
Yeah. I figure back then these guys didn't. It was rare they left the regiment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was rare.
And even when, probably even if they did leave the regiment and go to a new one,
You probably took your
they
rifle with
probably
you.
took their
Yeah.
rifle, their equipment with them.
Yeah.
And
It wasn't like, all right, leave this here, go draw one at your new unit. No,
yeah, that's
pack your shit.
that's
But
kind of
again,
crazy to think about too,
but it
though.
does. If you figure this weapon has, especially at this point, you're still alive, so it has saved your life numerous of
You've
times,
used it for,
years.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's the first thing you grab when you wake up,
Oh yeah,
the last thing you touch before you go
you
to
go to
bed.
bed. Yeah, I mean,
It's everything.
it's everything to you.
I mean, I don't know. I didn't really think about it very much when I came home and we turned them in,
Mm-hmm.
and that's probably because like I was still at the unit and I used that same
Right.
rifle multiple times in training events afterwards.
Yeah.
But after getting out and like going home,
Yeah.
thinking back to it, it's like it's kind of
Because
like
like
kind of miss that weapon,
and as tankers again, we have um, one rifle assigned to the tank. Usually it's your loader, so it was mine. I had mine for a few years. You know what I mean? I think the barrel was bent because I couldn't hit shit. But it'll sentimental
Oh, he's
value.
gonna shoot shit.
But it did. You know what I mean? Because when I had assigned it to when I moved into a gunner position, I said, "Well, I don't get my rifle no more."
Yeah,
And now I was a loader for a few years.
but it's even for you. It has to be even more about the tank, though, in
The
the sense of
tank,
like
because
the tank
that's
is like your musket at the time.
and
It's
it
probably
is,
like how the
and it's your home,
artilleryman
it's your RV, it's yeah, probably like an artillery. I mean that
in the
cannon.
Revolutionary War, in the sense that cannon was.
Well, especially if you give it a nickname, when you put a nickname on there, you gave it sentimental value.
And then you got to think for them, they got to lug that cannon
Yeah,
everywhere
everywhere.
they like. I couldn't imagine going through the entire Revolutionary War dragging this one cannon around,
I'd
and
probably
then
be
at
pissed
the end
off.
have to give it up and see the enemy use it and be
Right.
like,
See, I'd be a dick. I'll go to the infantry.
don't put your dirty fingers on my
Yeah.
cannon. Like
Exactly. It has sentimental value to
yeah,
you.
because you're like I've lugged this thing from New York to here to
To
there
here,
to
to there,
there
yeah.
to this
Winter,
point.
summer, heat, South Carolina.
You hate it, but at the same time you love it because you hate it when you're dragging it around,
Yeah.
but then you love it when you're using
When
it.
you're using that bad boy.
So there's
Oh
a
yeah.
very emotional like torment that goes on with
Yeah.
that piece of equipment, and then just see somebody else touch it.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking, especially you're having somebody else touch it in defeat.
Yeah,
I
because a lot of
mean,
the cannons and stuff too, like there was a documentary I watched that it listed out how many cannons, how many rifles, everything that was turned in.
yeah.
But if you're building, the Continental Army, if you're having to build it from scrap, and all the stuff that you've gotten before has came from France,
Right.
do you not think that they use that as their personal arsenal
Oh
later?
yeah. Oh
In the sense
yeah.
of like, I'm sure the Continental Army or the American Army that stood up after the Revolutionary War is probably all the equipment that was captured from the
Captured.
British.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm sure there's still French stuff
Oh yeah.
in the
Yeah. Especially came down to trying to build an army.
But if I'm building a nation, I'm building a military, and I know that I just threw the right haymaker or uppercut or
Oh
whatever,
yeah.
and I know that the war is going to start declining in the sense of we're going to win. This is going to be our nation. You know, now we pile things up, we blow it, we burn it, whatever. But to me, if I'm building, this is the best fighting equipment in the world from the
Yeah.
best military in the world.
That's what I'm
I'm
going
going
to
to
use
start
it.
building that up as a stockpile. So those British guys are never getting that shit back.
Right.
Like this isn't like you surrender. We're gonna hold your stuff. When you guys go to leave, we'll give it back to you.
Right.
No, I'm putting this in my personal stockpile.
Oh yeah, this is going to get used against you come the War of 1812. You know.
Exactly. Perfect
Yeah.
reference.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of that equipment that was captured at Yorktown, or when the British retreated
Yeah.
and left, and and gave us our I wouldn't say
Yeah.
gave us our but they decided to give up. A lot of that equipment was probably used against them, like you said, in
1812.
1812.
Yeah.
Because I can't remember the numbers exactly, but in that documentary I was watching, it was like just a tremendous amount of cannons and like
Also,
a
I
tremendous
mean,
amount of like
ridiculous. I mean, figure
muskets. Like,
Cornwallis was basically a whole army by himself.
it was like I'm not 110% on the numbers. It was what, like Cornwallis had like 7,200 troops.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and what I forgot to mention was, when he gives up Yorktown a day or an hour later, Gloucester or
Yeah.
whatever, they surrender as well.
Yeah.
So it's probably like the timeline of like Cornwallis is surrendering. He
Start
sends
waving
the
white flags like, all
he
right, I guess we're
sends the
good.
letter
Yeah.
over. They surrender too. So
Yeah.
I mean, every piece of military equipment in that little red circle.
It's American now. The
Yeah,
French don't need it.
yeah, because the French are gonna.
Yeah.
And we don't know what the French took back with them. We don't know if they did the
Yeah,
same
if they
shit like
left.
we've done in the sense of
Yeah,
like,
leave it.
we don't want to lug the cannons back. I don't know, but I'm definitely looking at it in like the strategic standpoint of the sense of like, once they leave, all their shit that they leave behind, I'm
Yeah.
keeping.
Stockpiling it. Yeah.
And then Yorktown probably gets cannons in place back in it that are British cannons that are being used by
Now
Americans
I know
later.
there is one cannon. It's called the Lafayette cannon. I guess it was a cannon he actually dove behind, and the cannonball nicked the cannon.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
For that to still be there, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and once in a while they'll pull it out when you walk in the Yorktown Battlefield Museum. You walk in, and a lot of times they'll have it displayed right there.
Oh, that's super
They
cool.
changed out. Yeah, it was really kind of cool. The story behind it. And,
Yeah, I'm sure.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how much stuff did the French leave? How much stuff did they allow us to keep?
Yeah.
How much stuff did we take from the British?
Yeah.
In these defeats like this, like, because this is the
Because
last.
we needed it.
Yeah, because like I said, we're building a nation.
Building
We're
our
building a
yeah. We
military.
need this. Yeah.
So like,
It ain't
how
like
much
we
stuff
don't
was
want
used
their
later?
shit. No, hey, we need that. You know.
So that's what I look at is
So
like how much stuff was used later. Like,
yeah, but probably all of it. You know, as long as technology didn't advance, like
right.
it did, like we talk about when you went from flint to percussion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think the War of 1812, it was still flintlock. So
They're probably it's
you,
probably a lot
yeah.
of
And if you were a soldier young and you came back older at the War of 1812, yeah, I mean, my mind like that motherfucker's probably shooting at me.
yeah. You come back with a new rifle.
New rifle, yeah.
You're shooting at some guys, and you're like, I'm probably getting shot at by old Betsy right now.
Old Betsy right now.
Betsy's probably being used.
Wilma's getting lubed and popped on.
Yeah. My buddy probably just died by Wilma. Ridiculous. If you guys don't think that we don't give our rifles names, then you're wrong.
You're wrong.
And it's always always female names.
Females. Yeah, I know tanks is always something cool, Except we had one guy, he had, Ginger Lynn, porn star. My buddy Drummond. That's what he named their tank. So
I never I was never in like a tank battalion or anything like that. I didn't really have much experience around tanks, and the only experience I had was back when I was at Carson. And like I said, like they rolled up in the middle of the night when I didn't really get to examine them very well. But I saw the movies and I saw like the names being put on like artillery barrels and tank barrels, and I thought that was something that didn't exist anymore. And then when I saw the artillery in Iraq, they actually had it.
You give
painted on the side of the gun, and
it's kind of like you give it a personality. Same with your rifle.
I thought that was cool to walk up on that and see the name on the side of the barrel, and I was like, oh shit, like they they do still do
Kind of
this.
like with the Bulls, you give them a name because you're giving them a personality, and you give
Yeah,
them some sentimental value, and that's the same with a rifle and a tank. Yeah,
yeah.
it's really
Once you
cool.
name something, it seems like it.
Yeah, I've had. I don't know if I still am or not. I was a part of like an armor group. A lot of guys who were still in, like, hey, I need a name with the letter F. So everybody gets on there. You start shooting names at them. That was always
Oh,
a
that's
fun
awesome.
thing. Yeah. So,
Going
but
back to like the rifle being given a female name, the reason why I'll say that is because uh, I'm sure if you're a female now in combat arms, it's probably different. But even when I was in, there wasn't females
combat arms,
in scout,
yeah,
yeah, scout platoon. So like when I went through basic, the drill sergeant was like, "This would be the last hole that you
yeah,
finger fuck for a
okay, yeah.
while." So I think that's probably why too. When you're laying there at night and you're curled up to your rifle, you're like, "All right, Linda," or
Yeah,
whatever,
whatever,
whatever
yeah.
name comes to mind, But
How do you think the women name them? Like stiff one or with a hard
do you
barrel?
think they use names like Bob?
Bob,
My
yeah,
rifle's name is Bill.
Bill,
They probably don't name them. Let's be real.
or just Dick because it's
They're
hard.
probably like, "This is my rifle, Nicki Minaj."
It got back.
Or we're over there thinking of stripper names.
Stripper names, yeah.
This one's Roxy.
Pixie,
Yeah.
Roxy, Chastity.
If you were named those names by birth,
Yeah.
well, your parents obviously spent a lot of time in the strip club. So,
Exactly. Yeah, because those hit Bambi. It wasn't
yeah.
about no damn deer.
To just side note real quick
Yeah.
before me and a buddy in high school, we had Jeeps together. We thought we were cool because we had these Jeep Wranglers. Well, one day we went to Advance. You know how like Advance and AutoZone, and they sell those little chrome letters.
Yeah.
We're like, we're gonna name our Jeeps.
Uh
So I named mine Roxy, and he named his Bambi. And my mom came out and like saw the names and was like, "Why did you choose those names?" And we looked at them and we're like, "They're stripper names. Why wouldn't we choose them?" And she's like, "You guys have never even been to a strip club." And we're like, "We know we're 16, but that's what dudes do. They name things after strippers,
Yeah.
and we're cool, so that's what we did."
That's funny.
Never even been in a. I didn't go into a strip club until I was 22.
No shit.
Swear.
Really?
Yep. I went in one, and I never went back.
Yeah, no. I think of all the disease floating in there.
I just couldn't. I couldn't get behind throwing
Hard-earned
my
money?
money away.
Oh, yeah.
That was the only
It,
thing. Like I had dudes when I first joined the army, they were always like, "Come to the
that's where
strip
they
club."
go. They date them.
Yeah.
I had one wanting to marry one.
Yeah. Oh, multiple dudes that I know
Yeah.
married them.
They go, oh, I specialist. I love her. That's a lot of dudes do, man.
Yeah. I just couldn't get behind and for all my buddies that did marry strippers, we all know how it worked out. So don't fucking say shit after this. But I just couldn't get behind the fact that I was standing there
Yeah.
throwing money out.
And this girl has done nothing.
And yeah, she's interested in me when I'm throwing dollars.
But when the dollars stop.
If I wanted someone to pay attention to me and then walk away from me when they're done, I'd go to fucking Hooters.
Same thing. But you end up with a full stomach.
Yeah. I get fed, I get the drink, whatever. I pay her a good tip. We're done. The transaction is Hooters women
and I
any
think
different?
a lot of these guys, their first time away from home, so they go a little bit hog wild.
And I'm sure they were doing that stuff in the Revolutionary War. They're probably going to.
Oh yeah.
There was
I wonder if there was.
There was that pub that they all went to that was
like. Man. So maybe.
I mean, Benjamin Franklin was hitting up brothels up in England. So,
no shit, and that ugly little fucking killer.
That's where money will get you.
Money will get you.
But yeah. I think that concludes Yorktown. So
yep. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I do. I mean, I really.
This is what. I mean, I don't even know how to explain it. I know it sounds crazy, but doing this research, getting to sit down and talk about it, like this is something that it doesn't feel like work. It's pure enjoyment, and from the research to putting the slides together to
And then, like, to me, I know there's therapy in there when you read about guys like Joseph.
Yeah,
The things they went through, because again, this is somewhat American soldiers been battling through since the Revolutionary War. I know
yeah,
men in war thousands of years, but I'm an American, so I'm more worried
yeah.
about American
So we're
soldiers.
talking about American history.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So something we've all dealt with in these wars. So these guys, you dealing with this, you're not alone. It's been something with warriors beginning of time.
and
So
the thing I've been struggling with the most is just the getting out and finding where my place is afterwards, and I've talked to you
yeah,
multiple times. I've bounced from things to thing, and I've done this and I've done that, but doing this has really helped me a lot in the sense of like it's a new topic, it's something new that I get to put myself through. So like, one week it was the Korean War, it was the Vietnam War. Yorktown is something that I had some knowledge on, but didn't have a lot. So
right.
like I got to dive in and really explore. And we could go on this topic for probably 8
Oh
hours. I'm
yeah,
sure we could
and
record
go
all day
all the
on
day.
it.
Yeah, and and that's again, Chris knows I'm a big revolutionary, a colonial history buff,
Yeah,
and I'm a member of the not a like huge member, but of the Historical Society of Williamsburg, and I just love it, and I love just I can never, we go to Williamsburg, I gotta walk at Yorktown, just
and you learn something new.
every something different every time, or when I'm reading something, I tell my wife, okay, I need to stop this part of the battlefield, and
Yeah,
like
and check this part out.
and
Get it
I
in.
gotta get out and walk, like so I got pictures of me and my daughter in front of Redoubt 10. That
Yeah,
that was kind of cool, and
yeah, because that
yeah,
makes it real.
it does,
It's not just history anymore. It's
and
something
the
you can
sad part
physically
about
see.
that, the coastline has eaten up, and it's really
Closing in
starting
on it.
closing in on it. So it's sad. So if you,
But you shared that with a different generation too, in the sense of your
yeah, my
daughter can,
daughter, yeah,
maybe when she travels back later on, maybe it is gone, but she can say,
yeah,
"I
and she,
stood right here,"
yeah, she'll have the picture. You know what I mean? That me
Yeah.
and my dad stood right here. And
So,
that's why I hope one day she takes her children there.
and I think
So
that's how we keep these things alive and we keep them going. And
yeah,
that's what I was saying for me is like I've struggled with the getting out, and I've always been drawn to not just history but war history. But I'm looking at it in a different light now in the sense of, yeah, we talked about what Joseph did while he was in,
right,
and we hit on very briefly what happened to him afterwards.
right,
But the part for me that's very therapeutic and makes me understand a lot more is that these guys, they did have a wartime, but their story doesn't end there.
no,
There are so many more things. It's like watching a movie. The conclusion happens, but what happened to the characters afterwards?
afterwards, yeah,
And we do a really good job of telling the war story, and
right,
and movies do, and society does through history. But uh, for me, at least, reading about these people, I go a little bit further and read like what did they do after, what did they become after,
yeah,
and that's what helps me a lot. Is in
oh,
the
it
sense of
does,
I get to relate to them in the military perspective, but then
and
I
that,
find ways to relate to them
yeah, and
afterwards.
and that's always been my thing. Again, I love studying war and everything, especially American war. But I remember when I started having issues, I went on a, I think I got real more depth into war and soldiers because I was looking for that. I was soul searching for what is freedom, and then reading about how these guys went through similar things and what they did with their life afterward. I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
how do I get to this point where I can, and I'm there now. You know what I mean? There's always going to be issues. You just got to learn the tools to deal with every day.
and I think
But
it
this has
helps.
been
I didn't mean. I was
no,
just gonna
you're
say I
good.
think it helps with like looking at it, they didn't just have like a fairy tale ending afterwards.
Right? They
It shows you that like all the struggles I've been through, all the struggles you've been through afterwards, like they went through the same
same
thing.
thing. Right?
Like I mean, Joseph just wanted at the end of the day to like farm his 100-acre farm,
Farm.
and then here he is fighting somebody that fought the same war that he fought over land rights.
Yeah.
And and then it dwindles down, and then he's got to fight the government for war
pensions and
pension,
yeah,
which is like the same thing as like the VA now. Like, I mean, so like his struggles. That's what's
never
crazy
stop.
about the American soldier and the veteran is that everybody else goes through life.
Right.
Everybody else does their normal life. They graduate high school, they either go to college or start a career.
Yeah.
They have the normal up and downs of life. And I'm
Right.
not saying that their life is easy or harder or whatever. I'm just saying they go through those things. But then the American soldier goes to combat, goes to war, Vietnam, Korea, World War II, Gulf War, Revolutionary War, Civil War, War on Terror, whatever. They go through these conflicts, these combat situations where their emotions are high spiked or really
Right.
low, up and down roller coaster, and then they've got to come back and settle into the everyday life that everybody else already has to jump on.
Right. And, uh, I guess, and this is every soldier when you're deployed and you go overseas. And my dad can mainly vouch for like me. He tells people my son came back. He was not my son who went over there.
It's a different person.
You're a different person, and that's everybody. You come back, you're different. Your outlook is different.
Even if you saw hard combat or you didn't see hard combat, in the sense of your living conditions, like everything that's taken from you,
Yeah.
in the sense of like you're not easily accessible to all these amenities, all these things. You get humbled very quick.
Yes.
And when you come home and you have to live in a different scenario in the sense of like all those things are back, but
your mindset's different.
Your mindset is different.
Yeah.
And I think that was the same thing for these guys. Like the only difference is me and you didn't fight a conflict in our backyard and win the freedom for our people.
People, yeah.
So I mean, I'm not saying that Joseph and all of them had like a chip on their shoulder after they were probably just thankful the war was over, what they fought for,
and victory. Yeah,
worked out.
I mean, yeah, a great nation was formed.
But then look at him, years later.
He's fighting,
and now he's fighting to just keep his land.
Yeah, and then a pension.
And it's kind of like, is that what I'm worth? $96 a year,
right?
After I gave you everything that you have
today. And I get you look back because I know I felt like this, and it. I know probably Joseph did too when he go and ask for his pension. The government, because you swore to protect your government, you know what I mean? Where in my case, they were the first ones to spit in my face when I start having issues because of being overseas for them.
That's where we get, like I was saying about the chess pieces.
Yeah, chess pieces. Yeah.
You were a means to an end, and then when you came home, they forgot about you and moved on.
Yeah, all this pawn, yeah.
And that's the difference, though, between us and Joseph is in the sense of Joseph literally, the foundation and what they stood on afterwards wouldn't have been available if people like Joseph wouldn't have bared what he bared on his back. You know what I'm saying? Like the wars that have been fought since then have been in foreign lands over foreign problems. Right. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't enter World War II or anything like. I'm just saying that war specifically that he fought in was the birth of a nation.
Oh yeah.
And if those men wouldn't have, they could have easily been like, no, I don't want to do this. I'm British to the end.
Yeah, I'm a loyalist. Yeah.
And they could have all turned their backs on, and then all these people wouldn't have had the army to fight.
Right.
They wouldn't have had the men to fight. They wouldn't have had those things.
Yeah.
So those guys, really, in my book, the government should have paid out 10 times more than what they thought they were worth at the end of the day, and the fact of we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. And I'm not saying that those soldiers looked at it that way. They probably Joseph might have even felt guilty walking there and asking for $96.
Exactly. I don't know. Yeah, we don't know. Right. Yeah.
But I'm saying from my perspective, those government officials, those politicians, the president, any of those people that were in power at that time wouldn't have even had a seat at the fucking table.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Joseph.
And people like him. So that's why I say if I know we harped on the Vietnam vet and the Korean War vet and everything like that, but really,
you got to give credit here.
If it wouldn't have been for guys like that, I mean,
so, there
wouldn't be a United States.
No, we wouldn't. like I said, my ass would probably be in Mexico. You know,
I don't even know if I would
we
be
would be,
here.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, but always grateful for the foundation
And I think
of
it's
our
very
American
important for
soldier.
the American people to, if you don't give a fuck about war history, if you don't care about any other war, um, you can be liberal, Republican, Democrat,
Yeah.
whatever. But at the end of the day, you wouldn't have the option to be what you are if the Revolutionary War would have never happened. So
Never,
if there's
if the
there's
ideas
no
of
other
these
war
men
that you respect,
respect this one,
at least respect that one.
yeah,
And you can say, well, George Washington was a slave owner and this and that. Okay, I'm not saying that they're perfect people,
no,
but I'm saying if it wouldn't have been for those people, you wouldn't be able to think the way you
you
think today.
right. Oh yeah, you'd be persecuted, have you, for what you think under the British crown.
You would have a king or queen hanging on your wall.
Yeah, a must.
Yep. Because I mean, even look at the British today. I'm not trying to attack the British at all. I fought with a lot of them. I've done a lot of training with a lot of them. And they do have a parliament and a president, and the king and queen are kind of just now like
Sucking up tax
a
dollars.
celebrity kind of thing for them or whatever. But still, years and years after, like they still
Yeah,
ruled that country.
and that's like my thing. I know. Yeah, what I think of the royal family. Like, oh fuck them, my
Yeah,
founders fought to get. I didn't have to
I
worry
agree.
about them, and that's how I feel today.
I think they're just glorified dictators at the end of the
That's all
day.
they are. Yeah,
It just has a better title. Sounds a lot
exactly.
better than
Yeah,
a dictator.
dictator. Yeah,
But no, to end everything on this note is just it doesn't matter what walk of life you are. If you live in the United States and you're here today, the biggest thing is to keep what we fought for back so long ago alive in the sense of, you know, on 4th of July, what breaks
yeah,
my heart more than anything is when people say, well, I won't celebrate a nation that's systematically racist or does this or does that or whatever. Okay, but when those people fought for this country back
yeah.
then, just know that that's not what they were thinking about
That
when they
that
fought.
wasn't their intentions.
They fought for you to have your own country, for
Your own
you to have your
country,
own place to live and have
to be able
liberty
to
to think
voice your opinion against the government. You're not allowed to do that in a lot of countries.
and to go
So
back to that whole thing that we started with in the beginning was that Washington could have been King George Washington.
yeah, we could still be dealing as a royal family with his ancestors
So
still.
you can say whatever you want. He chopped down the tree.
Yeah,
He had slaves. Say whatever you want, but at the end of the day, we could have had King George Washington instead we had President Washington.
president. Yep,
So
commander in chief.
be thankful for the country you live in. Do
Yes.
research. Look at the Revolutionary War. Look at what those people fought for, and maybe find some roots.
Oh, I think so. Yeah. Like another thing, I always tell people, if you study what life was like under the British monarchy for the American colonists, you'll understand our founding documents
Yeah.
and why they were written.
And
So
when you want to attack the Second Amendment, go fuck yourself.
fuck yourself.